To fillet or not to fillet? During the years I was a college sophomore, I became interested in philosophy and signed up for several courses, hoping the intellectual discipline would improve my mind, or, failing that, help me get girls. Even to this day, I still read philosophy on occasion. I have just been perusing Mortimer J. Adler's 10 Philosophical Mistakes. Surprisingly, Mr. Adler forgot the most important philosophical mistake: enrolling in philosophy courses as a sophomore. In his chapter, Consciousness and Its Objects, he cuts right to the heart of the problem. Quote, "If two persons are talking about an object that is an object of memory for both of them, or an object of imagination for both, or an object of memory for one and an object of imagination for the other, the question about whether that common object is an entity which also really exists, which also once existed, or which also may exist in the future, cannot be so easily answered." Unquote. Right. In fact, I found such problems absolutely impossible to answer. I never even knew they were problems, no one in my family ever having mentioned them. But I have no regrets about studying philosophy. For one thing, it comes in handy for filleting bluegills. Just the other night, my friend Keith Jackson and I went out on the lake and caught a nice mess of bluegills. As is well known among pan fishermen, there is no such thing as catching too many bluegills when you are catching them. It is only when you must start filleting them that you realize that any number of bluegills is too many to catch. Upon returning home late at night, Jackson and I were both overcome with the traditional generosity of successful bluegill fishermen the world over. "You take all of them," I told Keith. "Then when we go walleye fishing, you can pay me back." Jackson said he would stand for nothing of the sort. "I took all the bluegills last time," he said. "Now it's your turn. You take 'em. Be my guest." This last exclamation being expressed in the intimidating tone of Clint Eastwood's "Make My Day," and given the fact that Eastwood is but a puny shrimp compared to Jackson's 6'5", 250 pounds, I reluctantly acquiesced and hauled the whole mess of bluegills into my house. My wife, Bun, was stretched out on the couch, wine glass in hand, watching the late news. "Catch anything?" "A couple thousand bluegills," I said. "I'll just stow them in the refrigerator for tonight and get up first thing in the morning and fillet." Bun's eyes narrowed instantly to the slits that 30 years of marriage have taught me mean trouble, and even worse, work. No doubt she recalled the last time I had stowed a plastic sack full of crappies in the refrigerator. Her friend Lulu had been spending the night. I had told Lulu a dozen times that a lady of her intelligence and sophistication should not watch movies like Son of Killer Piranha, in which a vicious fish comes ashore and eats tourists. Furthermore, I told her piranha are seldom, if ever, found lurking in the fitting rooms of chic dress shops, although that's not a bad idea. Even less are they likely to be found crouched in suburban refrigerators. All right, I will admit that a crappie does look something like a piranha. So what happened was, Lulu can't sleep and gets up in the middle of the night and goes down to the refrigerator for a glass of milk. She opens the refrigerator door, reaches for the milk carton, and a half-expired crappie flops out of the plastic bag in front of her. That there is no way it could have gone for her throat, as she hysterically claimed. I, on the other hand, would have been happy to go for her throat, a voluminous organ that no doubt instantly raised all the neighbors a good 3 feet straight up out of bed. I personally was raised to within a few inches of the ceiling. Hovering there, exuding cold sweat, I calmly tried to deduce the reason for the psyche-shredding screech emanating from my kitchen. The only thing I could come up with was that a burglar had broken in and was feeding Lulu through the pasta-making machine. Later, when I learned that a mere crappie had set off Lulu's alarm, I gladly would have paid a burglar to perform that service. Rising menacingly from the couch, Bun pointed to the back porch and my fish-cleaning table. I slouched out, a bulging bag of bluegills sagging from my weary casting arm. It is at times like this that my years of delving into the quirky, quicksand depths of philosophy pay off. I spread newspapers on the porch, then dumped the spiny, slimy pile of bluegills on them. Immediately, as I stared down at the pile, the philosophical question of guilt came to mind. Would there be any reality to the guilt I would feel if, instead of filleting the bluegills, I used them in their entirety as fertilizer for Bun's roses? Would my guilt amount to anything in the endlessly expanding universe with its trillions of stars, some of which were probably orbited by worlds containing intelligent life, one being of which was probably at that very moment staring down at the equivalent of a slimy, spiny pile of bluegills, wondering how he could get out of filleting them? That would certainly be one test of his intelligence. As to the question of guilt, I could only answer, yeah, probably. I had killed them, so I would fillet and eat them. I picked up a bluegill and had at it with the filleting knife. An exhausted and shivering person filleting 10,000 bluegills at midnight could easily flip into insanity and scarcely notice it. Thus, the need to invent ever more difficult philosophical questions to keep the mind firmly astride the track of rational thought. Here is one of the tougher problems I came up with. If a wife has never expressed an interest in hunting, in the past or the present, and shows no inclination of doing so in the future, and if she has shown no discernible enthusiasm for guns, and indeed mildly distrusts them, would it be a relevant and significant act to give her a really nice .257 Roberts for her birthday? In the existential sense, the answer is, of course, yes. Still, the risk must be weighed. As the great philosopher Immanuel Kant pointed out, under such circumstances one must be alert to every slight deviation in one's normal existence, such as having your oatmeal taste funny 3 days in a row. Perhaps the single most difficult question that has stumped philosophers since the time of Aristotle is, why do men fish and call it sport? Clearly, the act of sport fishing is absurd, lying as it does outside the realm of reason. No sport fisherman can deny the absurdity of his activity, particularly at 1 o'clock in the morning as he stares down at a pile of 20,000 bluegills that he must fillet. Nevertheless, one must learn not only to accept the absurdity of one's acts, but to triumph over it. In one of the Greek myths, a character by the name of Sisyphus is caught by the gods in some misdemeanors involving wine, women, and song while he is supposed to be boringly dead. For his punishment, the gods force Sisyphus to push a huge stone uphill for eternity. As soon as Sisyphus gets the stone to the top of the hill, the stone rolls back to the bottom, and Sisyphus must walk back down and start pushing it up again. One version of this myth has it that Sisyphus triumphs over his fate and the gods because, on his way back down the hill, he laughs. Okay, so it's not that big a triumph. Nevertheless, it appeals to me because that is often the only triumph we have over our fates, to laugh. Bun jerked open the back door. "Would you stop that silly cackling?" she hissed. "You'll wake up the neighbors. You've got every dog in the block barking his head off." So much for Greek myths. At 2 a.m., with the eyes of 50,000 unfilleted bluegills staring gleefully up at me, I turn to the philosophical question of identity. Say, for instance, you have wooden boat A. You remove a piece from it and use it to start building wooden boat B. You transfer each piece of boat A to boat B. Eventually, you have transferred all the pieces. Now, what is the identity of the boat? Is it A or B? That's a tough question to answer, unless, of course, I am doing the work, in which case, boat B leaks like a sieve. Finally, with 200,000 bluegills glutting the porch at 3 o'clock in the morning, I came to the ultimate philosophical question. Is it possible for lifeless matter, such as rock and ice swirling in space, which the world once was, to evolve eventually into intelligent life, or approximately 1/64th of the human population on the planet today? I mean, go out and look at a rock and ask yourself how long it would take that rock to become a divorced public relations man who is 3 months behind in his child support. Quite a while, right? In fact, just about the same length of time it takes to fillet 500,000 bluegills.